You're listening to the Running for Distance podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Gilbert, and I'm excited that you're here to journey alongside me today as we lace up the shoes and journey through life, running, and all things in between, each and every week. Now, let's head down the trails and see what's in store in this week's episode.
Please put it in play.
That's right. We'll be on the defense and see how it goes.
Right.
All right. Thank you for joining me today on Running for Distance. I'm your host, Anthony Gilbert, and I have a guest with me today. He's not what we would consider one of our normal guests for running. That's fine because, as I've said, we cover everything from life beyond running. And, you might, I know he's ran before. He's not known for his running. He's known for his coaching. And so I'd like to welcome the show, Michael Shubert. He goes by Kip. So it's coach for most of us. He is currently the head coach for the boys high school soccer team at Sapulpa here in Oklahoma. It's a 6A school. They are still 6A, right? Or have they moved down to 5A?
This year we'll be 6A, but next year we go down to 5A.
That's what I thought. So the reclassifications are different with soccer than it is with football. I know they kind of vary. What is it, every 2 years that they change that up?
Yeah, soccer runs on 2-year districts.
Okay. So pretty exciting stuff. I know, Coach, you've had a lot of challenges in your life, and this and the last 12 months is no different. It's it's life and training as we go, adversity as you see it. Nobody has really known what to expect with COVID, and I know we'll get into some of that here in just a little bit. But last year your season pretty much was ramping up, getting ready to start, and COVID hit, and the season was done. And here we are trying to get the season going again, and COVID is still there, but now the weather is messing with things, and so it's like, come on already, let's go ahead and have a season. I know the boys, it's hard, especially for those that were seniors last year, to not be able to capitalize on that opportunity. And here you are, you've got other seniors this year, and it's like, here we go again. And so I guess my first question for you, Coach, before we dive into who you are and what you're made of is, how do you deal with this type of adversity when, I know you've got a lot of training and a lot of seasoning as a coach and as an individual, but how do you keep yourself as well as your team motivated when you have something like this opponent that you've never faced before?
That is a good question. And I think that's something probably everybody can relate to, especially in the last 12 months. A lot of things that I've experienced in my life have kind of set me up to be able to handle something like this. But I think for me personally, COVID, I didn't realize how much I was kind of burnt by losing that season last year. A lot of those guys, we had 13 seniors last year, and we had worked extremely hard from August until COVID hit in March. We got 3 games in to have that stripped from them. And those guys have been with me since freshmen. So, that was difficult. And I didn't realize how much that had kind of burnt me until we got into this year. And, Sapulpa, the Sapulpa school system has done a great job dealing with COVID, being in person, keeping people safe, and doing the things that they need to do to continue to educate, yet keep people healthy. But just the quarantine issues that we would see each week, and being kind of out of the classroom and being virtual with what I do this year, I think all of it just started to pile up, and I began to get really negative. I began to see all the things that weren't right, and all the things that I didn't have, and all the things that I lost. And those are kind of the things that I actually pride myself as a coach to not do. And so kind of fighting through those things with the boys and with the team. We're very open. We call it family. We have a big family thing on our wall, on one of the walls of the locker room. And so I would share with them that I was struggling. I'd be open about it, that, I was upset that we lost the season before, and we continue to lose guys to quarantine, and then we have to change this, and we lose a week here, and then, we're always having to adapt and move and trying to coordinate, everything just to try to get on the field. And so we just kind of adopted a saying this year, especially as we've kind of had it, but really gone into the grit thing. We don't quit and we just find a way. And so it got to a point where we had to start saying we get to instead of we have to, and we find the positives in it. How can we find a way through and around and over and under these obstacles, because they can just be adversity or they can be advantage.
Right.
So I think having that, I know the boys, I know they get a lot out of what we do, and the program is sets them up well and does a lot of things for them. I don't think they realize how much it does for me. They give so much back to me, so I think me having that outlet, being able to coach and being able to pour into them probably unknowingly pouring back into me, kind of helped me push through all that that frustration of losing what could have been and what if. And kind of turn that back into a focus of what can be this year. And I keep telling, we practiced yesterday and I just told them, we find a way. Do fitness in your bedroom, but we'll figure it out, and we'll win if we just don't quit. And those wins, I know, don't always come on the scoreboard, but they come with what's most important.
Yeah, that's something I know that you've always stressed, that I've seen you. You practice what you preach, and I know you often emphasize the importance of not focusing what's on the scoreboard and how things will, you'll face adversity. And don't get me wrong. And for those that are listening, don't get me wrong. Coach loves to win. If you're a coach,
Absolutely.
Nobody likes to lose. I mean, I hated losing as a coach, but there's nothing sweeter than winning. But it's more important than just the winning, because the scoreboard, when it goes dark, the numbers aren't there anymore, and those scores eventually will fade in memory. But it's the life lessons that you guys have endured, the things that you've showed, because you're helping train young men to prepare them for life. And I think that is one of the things that you emphasize on, is it's the most important thing. Winning and losing, yes, it's part of life, but when that scoreboard turns off, how do you handle it, right? What do you deal with going forward? And so how do you, Kip, stress the importance of winning without emphasizing the scoreboard, and making sure that the boys understand, winning is important, but it's not everything. And I know a lot of people get wrapped up in, we got to win. Yeah, winning's fun and we love it, but it's not everything.
Again, that's another through, and if we get a chance to talk about my past, we can, but it's something I learned going through what I went through. And I think as a society, and we can do this at our work, we can do it in our families, we can do it in whatever aspect of life that we're in. I think we get so caught up with success being labeled as a status, a win. Of course, in my profession as a coach, it would be in win-loss record or championships. And so, a win-loss record or a championship in whatever area of life that you're in, I think we get fixated on those things as being the marker or the measure of our success. And so with what I do with the boys and with my coaching, is that I'm kind of like you, and like most people, I'm really competitive. And I tell the boys that I hate losing more than anything. If we're playing Candyland and I'm behind, I'll turn the game board over so we start over. I mean, I'm that competitive. I hate it. And when the games are on, the lights are on, and the whistle blows, I'm all about stepping on their throat and choking them out and getting that win. However, once you set things up in the culture of what you do, that those wins in games aren't our measure. That's not what our outcome is. We're measured by the relationships that we form. We're measured by the work that we do each day. Our measure comes from how we develop and go through the process of getting to those end goals. And so we come in and we set goals each year. And I encourage them to dream big. And this year they they dreamed really big. And so I was just kind of, okay, that's big. We'll get there. But I keep stressing to them that those goals aren't going to be the end game. The scoreboard, the score, the win-loss record is not the end game. The end game is how you take all that happens in this season and apply it as you go forward in the rest of your life. So one of our mission statements is, or I guess our big mission statement in the soccer program is, we create champions on the field and off. And so when they realize that, yes, we want to win, and yes, that scoreboard will be in our favor if we're taking care of business, doing our daily process every single day, that it'll work out in our favor more than it won't. But that's not what we're striving for. We're striving for something that's bigger than what we are. We're striving for something that's more important than just a soccer game. And when they buy into that, they kind of get a why or a purpose about what they're doing. And then when the kids get a why, or anybody figures out what that why is or what that purpose is, they can do so much more than they ever dreamed they could, and can achieve so much more. Because if you're just fixated on that win or loss, if you lose, your energy dives. You lose that drive to continue. If it's not on the wins and the losses, but something bigger, doesn't matter what happens, you're going to continue to go. And that's just one of the things we always talk about. You don't quit, you win. And that win may not be a scoreboard or a district championship or a playoff berth or whatever else, but it's going to be a win that's going to really matter as you go forward. You know, and it kind of ties back into that success thing about being a record or a championship. And we all want those. And if we're doing the right things and taking care of the process, and we've got the why figured out, those will come. But it's how we use those times and those experiences to go through our life that really matter, that really have the impact.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. The why is so important in so many different aspects in life, especially. But, you know, as an athlete, you know, for myself as a runner now, you have to know what your why is. You have to identify that why, because it makes it more rewarding. It makes it more, you have a goal, right? And yeah, I'm fine with people that say, hey, I just want to go run. Okay, if you're just wanting to go run to do it for casual purposes or for fitness, that's fine. Just identify that you want to get better, you know, health wise, and you wanting to train to be physically better and just to get out and get in shape. That's fine. But if you don't have a why, then what's the point of you doing that, right? And as an athlete, you know, all of my career, we had, you know, you, like you said, you had the boys want to dream and they dream big. Well, that's one of their whys. They're circling that, saying, hey, I want to go after a district championship. I want to win these games. I want to do this. They're setting those whys up so that they have a focal point, because if you don't have a goal, then you don't know what you're going to accomplish, whether it's a small one or a large one, right? And so,
Right.
you know, for me, it's like, hey, I want to go and do this. Why? Because of this. And once you have the why, then you know what your focus is. And so, you know, I know as a coach, you want them to win, of course, but you also want them to get something out of it and take it beyond the field. You want to be able to have them take it into the classroom, into their jobs, into their futures with their spouses and with their families, because that's ultimately, you know, they are the future. And if they don't have a why going into their life, then they're going to be lost. And I think that's one of the important things as a coach, but also as an educator. You want to shape the future. And, you know, sadly, and I know you've seen this, I'm sure, you know, there's people that are out there that are in education that don't really have that why, that vision, that passion, like so many like yourself. They don't really know why they're doing it. And those are the ones that burn out and they kind of flame out and they're no good. And they're not only doing themselves a disservice, but they're also hurting the kids and their future. But there's the ones that will dig in regardless of what the pay is, regardless of what they go through. They're there every day and they're there to impart something into the kids. And I'm so glad that I had teachers and coaches, much like yourself, Kip, to where they imparted something into me that stirred something in me and helped me find that why. And once I found that why and I grabbed a hold of it, man, it makes things so much easier, right?
It does.
And even with, you know, with Micah, you know, for those that are listening, my oldest son, Micah's kind of under coach in some aspects in the junior high program. Some of those boys still haven't found that why. They're still they're still kind of, they're still younger, and they're still
Right.
kind of bobbling around, and they're still kids, and they don't know exactly what they want. And I know you watching them and me watching them when it gets frustrating as a parent, as a coach, to watch them continuously lose and get beat. And it's like, man, I just want them to win a game so that they can feel some confidence, because like you said, you start to lose, you hang your head, you lose that momentum and that drive, and it's hard to get out of a losing slump. And I'm glad that they won that last indoor game that they played before the indoor season ended, just so that they could kind of capitalize on their hard work and their efforts. Yeah, big deal. It was a win, but it built some confidence in them. But yeah, they're still trying to find their own identity. They don't know exactly what they want. Some of them are
Right.
starting to kind of lean there, but it's just continuously motivating and just planting that seed like you guys do, you and Bobby, planting the seeds, and just, you're there to water it. You've planted the seed and you help them to learn how to water it and help them to learn how to grow it. And then it's on them. And so, you mentioned your past. I do want to get into that, because I think that's a huge segue into what drives you now, Kip, is you take those life lessons that you've learned and those areas of adversity, and have turned it to where you can use that to motivate yourself and motivate those that are around you. Like one of the quotes that I found that you have said was, you've won a lot in life, but you've lost it all.
Right.
And so, how about you just kind of take us back? I know you played soccer growing up, and just kind of take us into the background of who Kip Shubert is, and kind of where you started, and we'll progress from there.
Okay. You just cut me off anytime, just so
Sure.
I can get winded, and it's a long story.
That's all good.
And again, going back to that why, that purpose, it took me going through about 46 years of life to really figure out what that was. And I think so many people think that it's what they do or how they do it. And that's where people get confused. It's not, being a teacher or a coach is not my why. That's what I do. Coaching and teaching is how I do it. It's that being able to develop those relationships to really impact kids. And once I figured that out, and that was my natural gifts and abilities as well, that allows me to not quit no matter what happens. And so, I started playing soccer when I was probably 7 or 8 years old in Broken Arrow. We were on fields at that time over on 71st and 145th. There was just there wasn't anything there at that time. But grew up in the Broken Arrow Soccer Club and was on the first high school team at Broken Arrow High School. My senior year was the first year they had high school soccer in Oklahoma. Played club. Well, we were allowed to play club when we turned 12 back then. So went into club soccer, was very successful. And just a kid growing up, I love sports, had a good family and all that. My parents got divorced when I was in the 8th grade. And so that was not very normal back in the late 70s, early 80s. And so that threw me for a loop more than I realized. But ended up going to college to play soccer and had a very distinguished career as a college athlete. Was a 2-time offensive MVP in my conference, was all conference 2 years. I just ended up playing professionally a little bit in the MISL, which is a major indoor soccer league at the time. It's the only professional league that was in the States then. But no matter what I achieved, and no matter how good I did, I always second guessed every single thing that I did. I could score a hat trick in a pro game and be interviewed, and after it was over, I could think, I got lucky. How did I do that? I can't ever do that again. And was constantly battling a self-worth, self-value, kind of self-image issue. Even though I was on the outside very successful, on the inside, I didn't see that. I saw the exact opposite. And so it's just, I think, again, we go back to that success and how we envision that. It didn't matter what I achieved through soccer and as a collegiate player and even playing a little bit pro. it left me unfulfilled. I never could find what I was looking for. I got married, had kids young, got divorced, and then got married again, and had another child, and got divorced. And, again, in those relationships, I missed that whole aspect of relationships. To me, that was having a wife and kids was just something that you did. That wasn't how I measured success. I didn't see success in relationships. I thought they were there to serve me, not the other way around. And so it doesn't matter when I started teaching and coaching. I did a great job doing that. I was a distinguished teacher. I was all-state coach in high school in Oklahoma, over on the west side, back when I did that, the first stint go around. And as a club coach, I had an attic full of trophies from every major tournament that we played in. And we're in 10 state championships at the club level. And again, all that stuff, just like you said, when the scoreboard turns off and goes dark, it fades and there's nothing there. And so no matter what I achieved and what I got, it just never was good enough. And I was just never fulfilled. Didn't have that peace. And so I began to look to my relationships, for my marriages, and for, that fulfillment. I began to seek it in other people, which I would totally suck the life out of every relationship that I had, trying to find that fulfillment. And when I went through my second divorce, and I was one of those guys that we drank and stuff, but I drank on the weekends. I drank at holidays, tailgates, those kind of things, kind of like what I thought was normal, what a lot of people do. But for me, no matter whether I was playing soccer or with my academics in school or relationship or whatever, same with my drinking, I was a go big or go home guy. And so if I drank to get drunk. It wasn't anything other than that. Looking back now, I can see that was an issue from my college days all the way forward. It's just that I was able to control it in a sense, and it didn't wreck my professional career or relationships really that bad. Because I was like a lot of other friends that I had. We drank on the weekends, drank on holidays, and that kind of stuff. But as I went through that second divorce and had to move out into an apartment, and I was hitting, I think, 40 years old, and with 4 kids and nothing to show for it. And I began to drink more heavily. And then, weekends turned into, 4 nights a week, 4 nights a week turned into 5, 5 turned into 6, 6 turned into 7. And so probably from 2010 to 2014, that was a gradual process of going from weekends and holidays to 7 days. And it was just the fact when I would drink and get drunk, I wouldn't feel lonely, and I wouldn't feel that just kind of closing in feeling of a lack of self-value and self-worth. It made me feel bigger and like Superman, kind of, in a way, I guess. And I know one of the questions you sent me was, how did I realize I had a problem? Well, in March of 2014, I had missed probably almost 60 days of school, and I was lucky that I hadn't lost my job, but I had a really good friend that was my principal. And so I had lost my house. I had lost my car. My brother from Broken Arrow came, I was in Oklahoma City, came pick me up and talked me into going to a rehab facility. And so I agreed, and I checked into a rehab facility in Cushing, Oklahoma, and for 30 days, and I still didn't think I had a problem. I thought I was going to rehab to learn how to drink normal, and so where I could get under control. And about a week into rehab, I got the word that I lost custody of my kids, and so, and all rights to them. And I think when I lost the relationships that mattered most to me, that's when I got it. And so at that moment, when I learned that day, I'll never forget it. My first thought was, go get your stuff. You're leaving. You're going to go get drunk and you're going to die. Who cares? And I was suicidal and that kind of stuff. And I happened to walk by the chapel that's there at this place and popped in to sit down in the front row. And, I was just kind of like, how in the hell did I get here? And just kind of a God moment for me. And it's just kind of, I felt just this warm sensation saying, let's go, you can do this. And I got up and walked out of there, and I haven't looked back since. And so it's been almost 7 years since that day, and 7 years of being clean and sober, and just working towards being a better person and being the best version of myself. And, there's a lot of lessons learned from that day until today, and I'm still learning them. But, that I think the biggest difference was realizing that life just wasn't about me. And it wasn't about me grabbing stuff and accomplishments and relations, the prettiest wife. And it wasn't about that measure of success. It was about me being able to love who I was first, so I could turn around and love the people around me. And it really is that simple. And I think when I got that allowed me to turn around and start being who God created me to be, and use my natural gifts to relate to young people and to coach in a lot better fashion. Because up until that point, all that success I had as a player and a coach, it was all about me. I've made good relationships with kids, and I still talk to players who, I got guys that are coming up for the showcase next weekend, if we have it, that both of them played club for me. And they coach high school here in Oklahoma. And where a few players of mine went last year to play college. The kid that I coaches that college team. So I made relationships and things, but I was all about those wins, the scoreboard, those championships. That's what I was after, and did not realize that wasn't what a true win is. It was how he impacted those kids. And so when I was able to shift that focus and to put it into the right perspective, and when I was able to understand who I was, what was wrong with me, where I had gone wrong, where I had gone right, the good, the bad, the ugly, and I was able to embrace that and to accept it and love who I was and go forward, then that was a game changer for me. So.
Good stuff. Yeah, so many times, different stories and things that I hear was like, you had it all, right? You had the championships, you had the trophies, you had all the worldly possessions, but you didn't have happiness. You thought you
Right.
had happiness, right? You thought you had it all. And, there's a song by Toby Mac, and my thoughts just completely went out. It's if you gain the whole world, but you lose your soul, right? You think you have it all, and then you lose it, and you truly hit rock bottom. I mean, when you have this mindset that you were going to get it under control and everything was good, but then you got that notification that you lost your kids, and the one thing that you truly loved, the one thing that the last thing, that true relationship, because I know your kids mean the world to you, and it's like you lost that. And yeah, I can't even imagine. It's like, but it's funny, and yet it's serious at the same time that, always seems like we hit rock bottom, and then God brings us up, and, he levels the playing field, literally. And I think about Job oftentimes, where he lost everything, right? He lost his family, he lost everything, and yet he still served God. I'm like, how can somebody lose everything in their life and have the desire and the want and just to keep going and move forward? Because I mean, like you said, you were suicidal. You just felt like, what's the point, right?
Right.
I've lost it all. I don't care anymore, and let's just get it over with. And you were just doing good enough to get to the next drink and to numb that pain and that feeling. But then God stepped in, and literally that warm feeling, I've experienced that myself, and it's just a sense of peace and security, and knowing that there's reassurance there that there is hope. And there's so many people that have not experienced that, and that do need help. And so you had it all. from the worldly standpoint of playing and coaching and having all these championships, and then you lose it all. But fortunately, you were blessed to have a friend that was your principal that helped you. And because honestly, Kip, and I know you know this, you should have lost your job a long time before that.
Oh yeah.
The fact that
Hell yeah.
60 days of not being at school. I mean, most jobs, if you're not there for X number of days, you're gone. And so,
Right.
so tell me, Kip, the transition. So, you were coaching on the West Side, you were playing and coaching. And then you came to the Tulsa side. So that's East Side. If people are wanting
Right.
geographically, the West Side is the Oklahoma City area. East Side is the Tulsa area. Because there was a transition there from where you were at coaching and teaching, and then you came to the East Side. How much of a time lapse is there with that? Was there much after rehab that you got right back into coaching and teaching?
No. The last year that I actually coached soccer was 2010 until I took the job at Sapulpa 2016, 17, I think. And really, it's kind of funny how you say it's funny and it's sad all at the same time. And there are so many stories that I can look back on now and laugh, but it's still a time you want to cry. But really, I had the last year I coached high school was at Putnam City High School in Oklahoma City. My assistant coach was a former player of mine. He was teaching at Putnam City. He actually got me the job, and I didn't really want to take it, but I did. He's now the athletic director at Putnam City High School and the head boys soccer coach there. Great guy. But in my second year, I came in and they got me for some reason, I seem to get brought into situations where things are really, really bad and they need somebody to turn it around. And much like I could do that for programs and teams and clubs, but never could do it for myself. And so, we got it turned around at Putnam City and started doing well, but I just wasn't really all in with it. And I remember Eddie, my assistant coach, he was like, Coach, if you're going to do this, do it. If not, quit and I'll take over. And he really made me mad when he said it first. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll give you 1 year. And that's the year I was all-state coach and did one of my better jobs. And I was doing it to show him I could, I think. But it also cut into, the drinking time and things like that. And I got divorced in the middle of that year. I just didn't think I could do it again. And so again, that self-doubt, that lack of self-worth, and I set a standard really high, and I didn't think I could continue to do it, and I didn't want to do it. And so I quit, which was probably, looking back, was bad, because that was one of the things that always kept me good was soccer and being able to coach. So from that point, from around 2010, when I finally gave up coaching altogether, I didn't coach again until 2016. When I went to rehab, I was still living in Oklahoma City, 2014. I got out and stayed in Oklahoma City area for about another 9 months. I held my teaching job again, but, something was just missing, and I was still trying to figure me out, who Kip was. I was still trying to figure out how sobriety worked and just in how life worked in general. And the only friends that I really had at that time were my bar friends. And so I was going back to the same bar I went to before I went to rehab every single night and staying until about 9 or 10, and wasn't drinking. It was, in a weird way, they kept me sober because I was not going to let them down. It's like I wasn't going to let a bunch of drunks down. So, and that's what kept me sober. And, here I was, this guy going into rehab, and I tell the story a lot, but I literally had a brown cardboard box with my underwear and socks in it and a suitcase. And that's it. And I had nothing else. And no car, no house, no nothing. And I come out and I'm able to get a really small efficiency apartment and kind of start to build my life back. Couldn't see my kids still. stuck in that environment of going to the bar every day. And I finally was just like, I'm not gonna go any further than where I am right now if I don't figure out how to get around people who are going in the same direction I want to go. If I'm going to be around people that are in the bar 24/7, that's where I'm going to stay. And I knew that wasn't a good environment for me. And all my family, brothers and sisters and parents and stuff, they lived in most of them live in Tulsa, the Tulsa area. And so I moved back to Tulsa and started my life over here. And I got a job at TPS working at Tulsa Rogers and was going to Guts Sapulpa Church in Sapulpa. And the pastor there is I coached against him as a club player. He went to play D1 in North Carolina, had been the chaplain at ORU for the soccer team. And he's like, hey, Kip, the soccer job in Sapulpa is open, why don't you apply for it? And I'm like, I'm retired. I don't do that anymore. And he's like, well, if you apply and get it, I'll be your assistant. And I'm like, thinking that there's no way that I would do it or get it. And then applied for it. And it's one of those things where I think, God was just pushing me into a position where it was very uncomfortable for me. I knew that's what I was good at, but at the same time, it was kind of even unproven to me because I had never done it sober. I never done it the way I was now, and I didn't really care, but I knew Sapulpa, I knew the history of Sapulpa boys soccer. And it's like, God, if I'm going to coach again, why are you sending me there? And I just didn't really want to do it, but I got the job, and then AJ came and became my assistant coach. And really, I think it was an opportunity for me to start to put in what I had learned and about what was important and about what real wins are and what real success is and how it's measured, and just really start to pour into those boys and change the culture of that program, not just to win games, because they've done a lot of that. We've changed that program around, but more importantly, we've changed the boys coming out of that program. And that's probably the most important. And that's kind of, how I got here from Oklahoma City, Tulsa. I really wasn't looking to get back into coaching. I thought I was done. And even getting, I think this whole process of the alcoholism and all of that, it just brought me back to kind of a circle of life type deal. It's brought me full circle where teaching and coaching and impacting young people are my natural gifts and abilities. It's where I can do it without even thinking, and it's just what I do well, and it's brought me back to that point to where now I can use that. And instead of me seeking after wins and championships for myself, I seek how to help those boys get wins and championships that really matter, because they won't remember the trophies and the wins and stuff like that. But they'll remember something that happened in the process when they become husbands, when they become fathers. They'll remember something that we did in those seasons that's going to benefit them and benefit their kids and benefit their marriage and, benefit them as employees or employers, depending on what they do. So, kind of brought me back to that point.
I know you have there's a saying, and I love it: all in, all together. Yeah. I mean, that speaks for itself. I mean, you're all in 110% and you're together. I mean, that's team, family. And I know there's something that you guys did this last year, like you were just talking about, Kip, of, doing something that they'll remember forever. And I think probably one of those would be you all were having Zoom calls because you couldn't get together as a group, but you were still able to communicate. And you were challenging the boys to, come up with some big dreams and big goals. And I think that's probably one thing that will probably stick with, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I want to say it was Will came up with a pretty big word or something. You were challenging them with words. And
sedulous. Yeah.
What does that even mean? I don't know.
I didn't know. Will would know because Will's smart. I'm like, what in the heck does that word mean?
But it's those types of things where you pull things out of kids where these kids are going to be affected in such a way that we don't even know the outcome, right? Because we all are. being quarantined and being away from one another, and and then be able to get back out on the field with their brothers. It's huge because it's like life is being breathed back into them. They've faced adversity. They have faced something that none of us had ever experienced before. No one could have projected or predicted how this would affect us, and we don't know how it'll end up. Other than we make it we make it what we want it to be, right? We, as long as we have a good attitude, and we strive towards those goals and those whys, I know we'll be successful. But it's like you were saying earlier, it's real easy to get down on yourself, and it's real easy to get in that rut, because it is a challenging situation that has no, we don't even know. Basically, we saw where it started, but we don't know the end, right? And so it's like
Right.
this moving, shifting, fluid situation. And it's like, how do you conquer something like that without getting consumed? And even the strongest tend to start to get sucked into the vacuum, because it's discouraging, because when you're not able to be with your, you're not in the school itself because you're teaching virtually, you're not able to be around your players. And I know as a coach, and I know from my own experience when I've coached, there's just something about being on the field or on the court with your team, and
Right.
there's relationships and bonds. When you can't do that, a part of you is missing. And whether or not the players drive you absolutely crazy, because I know they do, and they're frustrating at times, and of course this is part of life, and it's just like being a parent. Your kids drive you absolutely up the wall, but there's nothing better. And to see them on the field performing, and even when they're not performing, and you're you're having to bark correction at them, you don't get that when you're virtual. You don't get those
Right.
opportunities. So yeah, it's just it's crazy to think of how much that we've already come here. We're coming up almost on a year since all of this has transpired, and we don't really know how long things are going to move forward. I'm hoping that you guys actually have a season this year.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sure that you will, um, as long as the weather will start to cooperate. It's like, everyone joked, "Yeah, I'm ready for 2020 to be over," and then 2021 rolls in. And
Hey, it's all an adventure. It's all an adventure.
that's exactly right. And but the attitude is everything. But I wanted to ask one thing, Kip. What is your overall, I know some basic philosophies on your coaching style, but what is one of the things that you focus on as a coach, as far as your philosophy on coaching, and how you integrate your past and the adversity that you've faced mixed with your faith? How do you push that onto the players to perform them?
Um, yeah, that's always a good question, and sometimes it's hard to answer. I think a lot of times your base philosophy doesn't change, but how you go about it evolves a lot, I think, as you go through certain situations or experiences and you grow older and wiser, hopefully. It took me a while to get there. First off, even with this COVID, like I was saying earlier, it was really getting to me too. And I think if we, especially with the way our media is, and you can sit and you can scroll Facebook or Instagram for hours. I mean, and so much of what you see is negative. If you turn on the news, I mean, it's negative. I mean, it doesn't matter in the political climate that we're in. I think, seeing those things constantly got my focus shifted on the bad and what wasn't going well. And so I think it was a situation where I had to get that focus shifted. And so that's one of the things I always stress to the boys is that, what we do, almost all of it is going to be here and here. The stuff we do with our feet, the soccer part of it is the least amount that we need to be worried about, because we may not be the best skilled team, right? And we may not be the fastest, we may not be the biggest, we may be one of the youngest. especially being where Sapulpa is in 6A, with our number of students that we have to choose from. And there are a lot of disadvantages, but I stress to them, and I've done this with all my teams, is that we take what we have and we make it work. We focus on what we have instead of what we don't have. And so, I think that's one of the big things I push is finding a way. And I think with trying to impart my faith and my passion into what we do and how I do things with coaching, it's just hitting on all of those, hitting on that base broad topic of what can we do well. So can we have the best mindset? Yes. Can we be the fittest? Yes. Can we be the toughest? Yes. Can we understand our system that we're going to use the best? Yes. Can we be simple? Yes. I mean, hitting on all the things that we can say yes to and not worrying so much about the things that we say no to. And I always tell the guys, I use this analogy, is like if their skill level's here and our skill level is there, well, if we have a better mindset, it does this. Mm-hmm. If we're fitter, it does this. If we're tougher, it does this. If we're the most simple, it does this. If we understand and are smartest, it does this. And so it's just a way of kind of flipping the tables on things. And I really stress to them that, everything that we go through and everything that we encounter, every obstacle, every hardship is just an opportunity to get better. And I think it's just one of those things where if you had to sum it up, really, I know I'm rambling, but if you had to kind of sum it up, it would just be believe it, speak it, do it. And that's kind of how I've always kind of presented it to other people when I've been asked or I shared with groups of people. It's just, you got to believe it, you've got to speak it, and you got to go do it. And if you believe it, and if you believe you're a winner and you speak like a winner and you go do it like a winner, most of the times you're going to win. And And so if you understand that measure of success, then even when you lose, if you learn, you still win. And so I think that's just probably, if you had to sum it up, that believe it, speak it, do it is my main philosophy. And let's jump back in, but I kind of wanted to share. I think we have this misconception that if you're all about relationships and you're all about measuring things the right way and not the scoreboard, that it's like some kumbaya around a campfire with making s'mores. And those guys that are after the wins and the championships are those hardcore guys that are, win or else and that kind of thing. And it's, those building relationships and doing what I do now, it's not always just a kumbaya, feel good story. It's one of those things where I push the guys as hard as I can push them, not to demean them, not to tear them down, but to let them know that they can actually do so much more than they thought they were capable of. And when they make excuses, I'm hard. And it's just those things where I usually say, doesn't matter, get better. Even when they've got a legitimate complaint, it's just, doesn't matter, get better, find a way. And they're like, Coach, but they were asking me, well, how do I get better? How do I get better when we can't go outside and it's 10 degrees? And I'm just looking at them, it's like, doesn't matter, get better, find a way.
Think outside the box. Put
up two things do burpees in your room, push-ups, sit-ups, a little cone shuttle, figure it out. You can find a way if you want to. And so, I think that's just kind of, again, philosophy in a nutshell is believe it, speak it, do it. And, I use a lot of the things that Jesus would talk about when I start putting into that, as far as, do not grow weary while doing good, for you shall reap if you do not lose heart. That's don't quit, you win. And, the measure by which you give is you're measured by what you give and not what you get. And the lady who put in, 2 cents at the offering was giving way more than the rich person. So it's just, and I use those terms and I do it often and frequently to the guys. And I'm not ashamed of it and I'm not afraid to say it. And it's what I stand for. And so it's just, I think that's important today because people will tell you what you want to hear and stand for what they think you want to see. And that's all false. And especially in our world of social media and everything else, everybody's got a highlight reel and that's all you ever see. So you gotta be authentic.
Yeah, it's real easy to get that on social media. Everyone sees the highs and, all the great stuff, but it's honestly, there's times where, I'd rather see somebody be real and authentic.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with one of my best friends the other day, and he, we Marco Polo back and forth, and he recorded a snippet of him yelling at one of his kids. And I said, that was beautiful, man, because that let me see that you're real. And I'm
Right.
not the only one that has yelled at my kids. And,
Yeah.
but, players often get their feelings hurt so often because they feel like coach is picking on them, right? Why are
Right.
you saying this? But it reminds me of my 6th grade basketball coach. He was always up in my face and always just finding something that just, would irk me. And I'm like, as a 6th grader, you're very immature and not sure what's going on. But later on, when I was in high school, he's like, why I was always hard on you, right? And I was like, well, why is that, coach? He's like, because I see potential in you. And I know that the potential in you is greater than what you're giving yourself credit for. He's like, you have to keep working towards those goals and you have to put in the work. He's like, I can see that potential and I'm trying to get you to see that potential. And sometimes it takes a while to, with some of these younger boys, they don't always get it right away because they're not mature enough to understand it.
Right.
And it's hard sometimes as a coach and as a parent to try to get them to get it, but you can't make them get it because they have to grab it themselves. Because you can force feed it to them, but if their heart's not in it, they're not going to grab it and they're not going to run with it. But as soon as that light bulb clicks and that light switch flips on and you see it in their eyes, there's no taking it away, because then they finally get it and they're going to go after it. And so the whole believe it, speak it, do it, that's faith without works is dead, right? You got to put some effort into it. You can say it and you can think it, but until you put the action, then it's just going to sit there, right? And so it's like, if you say you want this and you believe you can do it, then go out and do it. Because,
if you don't, it's just a wish.
That's why, dream big, but then follow through. Follow through is so huge. It's like follow what you say, write it down. Oftentimes, and I know that you do this with the boys, and I try to do it with my boys when I coached. Write down your goals and your dreams and the vision, because it's biblical. If you write it down, you make it plain, you got it in front of you and you see it, you speak it, you believe it, and then you act on that, right? You act on that faith. But if it's just sitting there and you don't put any action into it, then it's just words on a page and there's no substance there. And so I try to encourage, my own boys to do that, and they don't always get it, but and then I send them on down the way to where you push it a little bit more from a different perspective, and you start to see some light at the end of the tunnel.
It's just planting seeds. I don't know if Micah told you or not, but all the guys have an I am sheet. It's got our grit and then Sapulpa soccer, and it's got I am and 3 blanks. And so they had to write I am, an I am statement about themselves. And I encouraged them with Micah's team, with them not being there the whole time, they didn't go in depth as the high school guys did, but I encouraged them not to do like, I am smart, I am strong. Really think about 3 ways that you can be who you need to be for the team to win, not for you to win.
Mm-hmm.
And so they all did that. And even like you were talking about the 1 word challenge, and the high school guys did that, and they put it underneath there. We made it, we copied them out and laminated them and put it underneath their hook in their locker so they can see that word every day. Like Will's was sedulous, which I didn't know what that meant, but it was just overcoming extreme adversity, which is what he's trying to do. He just wants to be able to put on a uniform and play because he hasn't been able to.
Yeah.
With his health issues. And so, again, that mindset part is so important. And I really push that and stress that to all the kids. And you were saying about the coach getting in your face. I tell my guys, junior high and high school both, if I totally don't say a word to you, that's when you should be worried.
Exactly.
And if I'm always on you, and I had a senior ask me on the way home from practice yesterday, he's like, how come you're always on me? I'm like, because you usually don't perform well unless I make you mad. And so that's why I intentionally make you mad right off the bat, because you do a lot better. You will actually work.
Right.
Until then, it's not because I do it because I love you, not because I'm trying to make you mad. I just want you to be at your best, Because if you're all at your best together, we're not going to win any games. And so again, you can kumbaya everything all you want, and we can love each other all we want to. At the end of the day, I still want to win games. And because that going through that process to get that win, you're not going to remember what the score was or who you played, but you're going to remember that battle. And so once they get to a point, with their own families and their own jobs and their own careers, they're going to remember back about when they face adversity. They're going to remember how to get through that. They're going to remember how to win in those situations. And again, that's the big impact and the big why. As long as we keep focused, and then even for me now, it's really hard at times to stay focused on what the big picture is, because soccer is not the most popular sport in high school sports, and I get irritated really easy when the guys don't get their credit. I've already done my due. I'm past that part, but I want the boys to receive the credit that they deserve, because they work extremely hard. And when it's 20 degrees, they're out there practicing. And when it's, they do so much more off the field, helping people move and writing, pen pal letters. And, anytime somebody needs something, they call the soccer team, and we're there, and we get it done. So I want them to receive that credit. A lot of times soccer's overlooked. And I can even get off focus on that, getting irritated and upset that they don't get their credit. And that throws me off. And you've just got to stay focused on the process. That one day at a time thing was probably the greatest lesson I learned from my time in AA, was that one day at a time. And I never got it for the longest time. I was like, I always say one day at a time. That's kind of a stupid statement. I wanted I'm a go big or go home guy. I wanted the whole bit in the first week I was sober. And I wanted to do it better than everybody else. And one day at a time was too slow. But once I finally got it, and if I just take care of what's in front of me today and do the best at what I can today, that's the process that's in front of me. That's being in the moment. That's being present.
Yep.
And I string those together, then that thing I'm after, or that goal I set, is going to be obtainable. And you say dream big is one of our culture points. The one right after that is dream big and pursue it relentlessly every single day. And so that gets into that process part. And so those are the kind of things that I know that when our guys leave, those are the things that they're going to remember, and be able to pull out and do those things. Because I've won a ton of games in my career as a player and a coach, and there aren't very many that I could tell you a story about that I really remember. My biggest goal that I ever scored was a complete accident. And I remember that just because it was a complete accident. But that was probably the one I was most known for as a college player. And it was I was just at the right place at the right time. I didn't do anything to deserve all the credit. It just hit me in the shin guard and went in. I was just standing there. So, it's really cool how you can, whether you're running, with what you do, or whether it's soccer or whatever else it is. It's so cool, the stories and lessons that you can get from sport and how they relate and they transfer into real life. And we just, so often we miss that point, but now that I get a chance to do that.
Yeah. Especially with, any sport, but, just like you were saying, one day at a time. Well, on the running side of thing, it's 1 mile at a time. You focus on the mile that you're in to get to the goal that you're at. And, the things that I've learned the most for the goals that I was trying to obtain were the ones that I did not finish the race. We call that a DNF, did not finish. Didn't mean I failed. Didn't mean that it wasn't a good enough effort. It's just I didn't quite get to where I wanted to go. And so you learn those lessons, those hard lessons. I'll be honest, I have learned more from the races that I did not finish and cross the finish line than I have from any race where I ran. Those are the ones that I remember the most, because those are where I can apply life lessons. What did I learn from this, or what do I learn from this, and take that and apply it. That adversity, you carry that going forward regardless. And so, it's like all of the training that I went through for my 100-miler was a lot of mental toughness, a lot of physical. And I was like, what's the point? Well, I had a goal. But it's funny. It's like all that training for a race actually was able to be applied during the pandemic. It prepared me mentally. I knew I could conquer anything that I faced. And I was able to apply something that I took from sports or running and apply it to life. And it's you just take the day that you're in, the moment that you're in, and you give it your best and you go after it. And regardless of what you're faced, you face it head on and you move forward. Whether you go through it, around it, under it, or over it, you find a way to get around it. And so you have to take that initiative of one day at a time. Yeah, some people don't think that's, like you said, at first you thought it was stupid. What's the point? But once you get it, and we survive one day at a time, that's how we're supposed to live. We're supposed to live in the moment as if tomorrow it doesn't come. Today is the moment. We're not promised tomorrow. So we live in the moment that we're in, and we take it one day at a time. And that's how we should go. We don't live in the past. We don't live in the future. We live in the here and the now, and you make the best of the situation that you're in now.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I know you faced a lot during the pandemic yourself. It's just one of those things where I wish I could run like you sometimes. And I'm sure I could if I really wanted. I played soccer, you'd think, and I don't like to run. I always tell the guys, like, you guys that are in the back, I'm always yelling at you to get up. That was me, but I was able to get by with it simply because I was always the biggest, fastest, strongest player on the field. And so I could kind of squeak by sometimes and not have to push myself. But, for not liking to run, I picked a sport that ran the most.
People don't think about it, but they run a lot.
Like, we had, and I never came off the field. So I was like, how did I ever run that much? Because now I run to the mailbox and back. It's like, whoo, I need to sit down and catch my breath.
I know watching professional players, and I think they average 3 or 4 miles a game.
Oh yeah,
at least. And you don't think about soccer being that much running, but it is, especially for someone that's like a midfielder. They are covering every inch of that field. The goalies probably have the easiest because they don't run much. Right. They have to be more agile. But there's definitely running involved. And even Mike was like, why do I have to run so much? I was like, you got to be conditioned. You got to be able to cover the field.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to take care of it. And if you're on the backside of the field, you can sometimes get by with it. But you got to have some opportunity to move if you have to. And good stuff. Well, Coach, I appreciate you jumping on with me and diving into some good stuff there. And I appreciate you sharing. And it was great to catch up with you. And hopefully this next week, the weather will turn up warmer. While I love snow, I like to be able to go out and do stuff outside as well. And I know for a coach and for soccer, you got to have a field that's accessible and not iced over and not a foot of snow on it either. And so,
and we're going to play, like I told both teams, we're going to play regardless. If we have to do it on our own, we'll figure it out, but
you'll get it done.
We're going to play. So we'll
awesome.
figure it out.
Well, I look forward to seeing how things progress this spring season, and I wish you all the best, and you have a great afternoon, Coach.
You too. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Running for Distance podcast. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode and that you'll join me next week as we journey down the trail for more adventures. Until then, have a blessed week. This is the Scarecrow Runner signing out.